Hello and welcome back to the Academy of the Magical Art. I am Frederick, and this is the first video in a series on the signs of the Zodiac that we are about to commence upon. This will take place over the course of a year, and as the sun moves through each sign of the Zodiac, we'll take some time to discuss that individual sign. Right now the sun is in Aries for about another week or two, so we're going to spend some time discussing that today. Before we get into that, however, I'm going to be using a couple of terms that I want you to be familiar with and understand. And those terms are the detriment, the exaltation, and the fall. And what that basically means is that each planet, the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Luna, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, each have a detriment, an exaltation, and a fall. Now, when you speak of an exaltation, that is one of the 5 essential dignities of a planet. Okay, so the 5 essential dignities would be its domicile, which is its rulership or its house, its home. And you look at the domicile and the detriment together. You have its exaltation and its fall. You have its triplicity. You have its terms or its boundaries. And you have its face. This is a subject that I'll do another short video on, explaining them in more depth. But for now, while you're watching this one, I just really want you to understand mainly the detriment, the exaltation, and the fall. So a planet's astrological fall is the sign that is positioned directly opposite or opposing a planet's sign of exaltation. The exaltation of a planet is its place of awareness. As I said, it's a place where it comes to its full realization of itself. And the fall is its place of weakness concerning the main functions of that planet, including all the characteristics that a planet represents. We'll do further videos on the planets in time to come. Right now, like I said, I'm wanting to cover the houses. So, in the case of the sun's fall is in Libra, and it is exalted in Aries. The moon falls in Scorpio, and is exalted in Taurus. Mercury falls in Pisces, and is exalted in Virgo. Venus falls in Virgo, and is exalted in Pisces. Mars falls in Cancer, and is exalted in Capricorn. And Jupiter falls in Capricorn and is exalted in Cancer. Saturn falls in Aries and is exalted in Libra. Uranus falls in Taurus and is exalted in Scorpio. Neptune falls in Gemini and is exalted in Sagittarius. And Pluto falls in Aquarius and is exalted in Leo. So in this case, because we're dealing with Aries, Saturn falls in Aries and the sun is exalted in Aries. So when a planet or a celestial body is said to be in detriment or in exile, that occurs when it is positioned in the zodiac sign directly opposite to the sign that it rules, or the sign which it has domicile, its home. When a celestial body is in detriment or in exile, it is said to really not be that comfortable in that sign, and tends to operate with its least amount of strength. It's very becomes very non-active. So again, we'll go through that same list. The sun is in domicile, or in its home, when it's in Leo, and it is in detriment when it's in Aquarius. The moon is in domicile, or in its home, in Cancer, and its detriment is Capricorn. Mercury is one of the 5 that have 2 domicile and 2 detriment houses. And its domiciles are Gemini and Virgo, its detriments are Sagittarius and Pisces. Venus is in domicile in Taurus and Libra and detriment in Scorpio and Aries. Mars is in domicile in Aries and Scorpio, and it's in detriment in Libra and Taurus. Jupiter is in domicile in Sagittarius and Pisces, and is in detriment in Gemini and Virgo. Saturn is in domicile in Capricorn and Aquarius, and is in detriment in Cancer and Leo. Uranus is also in domicile in Aquarius, and is in detriment in Leo. Neptune is in domicile in Pisces, and is in detriment in Virgo. And Pluto is in domicile in Scorpio and in detriment in Taurus. So in the case of the house of Aries, the planet that is in its home in Aries is Mars. The planet that is in detriment in Aries is Venus. The planet that is exalted in Aries is the Sun. The planet that falls in Aries is Saturn. So with Aries, Aries is described as the ram. That is its zodiac symbol. And its duration in tropical or Western astrology would be March 20th through April 19th. The constellation that correlates with it, obviously, is Aries, and its zodiac element is fire. Note that each zodiac sign has an associated element, earth, air, fire, water. The zodiac wheel, the year, starts in fire, and Aries is the cardinal sign of fire. We have cardinal, mutable, and fixed signs. So we have 4 elements. We have 3 qualities, making a total of 12. Each aspect of the zodiac having an assignment in one of those 12. And based on its quality, we will receive a description of how that house behaves within its element, or how the element behaves within the house. So Aries is the first 30 degrees of the zodiac wheel. Note again that we have 360 degrees in a circle. There are 12 houses. 360 divided by 12 is 30 degrees. So each house, it has 30 degrees within it. The zodiac wheel, the tropical Western calendar, begins at the spring equinox, which generally rests between March 20th and March 21st this year, 2017. It began on March 20th, so we entered into Aries on March 20. Aries in particular is based on the flying ram that provided the golden fleece in mythology. Individuals born in between these dates have their sun sign in Aries. However, depending on which degree of Aries the sun is resting, the first 10 through 20, or 21 through 30, we would be able to determine whether that person is an Aries 1, an Aries 2, or an Aries 3, each one depicting different characteristics. Something that I'm not going to get into. If you want to look a little bit further into what aspect of the sign of the zodiac that your sun is placed in personally, I strongly encourage it. In Western astrology, Aries is generally a sign of taking action, taking initiative, people that have a lot of leadership qualities. They don't generally like to be inactive. They are generally known for a little bit of a temper, being the cardinal sign of fire, and fire ruling a lot of our passions and our drives. Again, being ruled by Mars, the house of Aries is strongly autonomous, with being headstrong, and oftentimes have a tendency to show a little bit of impulsiveness, and sometimes even some reckless behavior and approaches to issues. Some people would describe Aries as being a little bit obstinate, a little bit self-centered, trying to please the self first. However, I've known some Aries, and that isn't always necessarily true. With things like that, when you are quote-unquote profiling a person based on their sun sign, you can't really get an accurate read because of the positions of the other planets on the zodiac wheel at the time that they were born. So a lot of these generalizations that you find about these houses can be strongly influenced by the positions of other planets in other houses. The sun just happens to rule a lot of our personality, a lot of our characteristics, and a lot of our projections out into the world around us. So you can generally get a pretty good beat on somebody by looking at their sun, but not necessarily always having all of the accurate details, and not being able to fit them into every categories of that sun sign, again, simply because of the influences of the other planets upon them. Things that you can generally bank on when it comes to Aries, though, is that drive, that passion, that enthusiasm, having a lot of decisiveness, wanting to take that action to push themselves forward. You know, Aries people can be a lot of fun. They like tapping into the childish nature of themselves. Can be very, very enthusiastic, which can be a very positive thing and very negative thing. It's just they put a lot of emphasis behind every action that they take, including their actions physically and verbally, just as their actions mentally within their mind. So when you get a combination of all of these different things coming out into once with that force of fire behind it, they can come off a bit hot-headed or brash to some people even. However, in all reality, the Aries personality is very loyal. Because they have that passion, they are passionate about the things that they care about and the people that they care about. They just have a lot of vigor and energy behind everything that they do. You know, this is the first astrological sign of spring when everything comes into life. So you see a lot of sleeping energy within the earth coming back and being forced back through the trees and the plants, and everything is really, really waking up. So when you see the spirit of Aries, you kind of can correlate it to that time of year. So for now, I would encourage that you take some time, pull up your natal chart, and do some looking at what planets, if any, you have that are in Aries. Looking at the planets that are resting within Aries, you can receive a lot of different information about those specific characteristics of yourself. Just as looking at what house Aries is resting in, keeping in mind that each house of the Zodiac rules different aspects. Your Aries positioning on your natal chart can be in the first house, it can be in the 7th house, it can be in the 12th house, or any variation in between. So understanding what house Aries is resting in and what planets rest within Aries in that house, you can derive a lot of really good information about the actions that push you forward, about your passions, about the vitality and that life force that rests within you, and how it's interplaying into your life. So when you see a moon sign in Aries, you can see a lot of courage, a lot of confidence, somebody that can openly express their emotions, the moon ruling the emotional states. Again, have a tendency to respond a little bit impulsively and have a quick temper. There might be a tendency for some outbursts, but they are sudden and not long-lasting, very much like a flame that is lit and not continuously fueled. As soon as that emotion stops being fueled, the flame will go out. There's a little bit of dislike and disdain for rules and structure. There wants to be a lot of freedom to move and breathe. There's a bit of a word of advice with Moon and Aries individuals, which is to develop some patience, work on having a cooperative attitude, and that will drive you a lot farther in life. So Mercury, our communication, being in Aries, you'll see a lot of snap decisions, quick responses. There's not a huge tendency to think before speaking, so that's something that has to be learned and focused on. So there will be a lot of wishing that, oh man, I shouldn't have said that, with individuals that have their Mercury in Aries. However, these people will make outstanding public speakers, outstanding debaters. They have strong opinions and they're not really shy about sharing them. Having a Venus in Aries, Venus being the way we love, the ruler of love, new loves, new passions are really exciting to people that have a Venus in Aries. That there's a lot of spontaneity in these relationships. That's how passion is kept alive. And at the same time, if that spontaneity isn't there, the relationship will suffer. It's very important not to be self-centered in the relationship when you do have a Venus that is in Aries. It's very important to spend time thinking about that other person that you're in a relationship with. Again, with the cooperation and the mindful communication, those are very, very huge things in a Venus and Aries individual's romantic affairs. There will be a tendency to be generous and splurge and expel a lot of love through actions or gestures and words. Words or displays of affection are very common. Being very generous with the loved ones, that there is a constant outpouring of affection and loving behavior, and that really needs to be reciprocated with these individuals and needs to be reflected back at them. Mars in Aries. Aries is Mars's home. Mars is in its domicile in Aries. So this is a very, very pure, very, very high-powered energy. Mars being the action planet, the representative of our driving force. When you see that in Aries, you see somebody that is very, very bold, very courageous, very independent, maybe even a bit of an overachiever. There is a desire to be first and a love for challenges. The more competition that is at play, the better off a person will be. Follow through is huge with these people. It's really, really easy to start things, but to have that flame driving them all the way to the finish line can sometimes be a little bit of a struggle. Having these natural leadership abilities, it is important to, again, be cooperative with the people that you are leading rather than stepping on them and trying to beat them to the goal. Keep in mind that working as a team is much more advantageous to the team. Jupiter in Aries kind of displays an outgoing, adventuresome, free spirit. Jupiter is our expander. It is the great benefactor. So Jupiter expanding the house of Aries creates an individual or attributes to an individual that really likes challenges, that really likes broadening their horizons and spreading that energy in a lot of different places. But it can have a tendency to overpower the people around them in doing so. So keeping that energy, I don't want to say detained, but refined and controlled, is very, very huge when you have Jupiter in the house of Aries. It's important to think about the realities of life and think about the repercussions of actions before taking them, especially when you have this planet placement. Now, remembering that Saturn is in its fall when it's in Aries, an individual that has a Saturn in Aries is the epitome of opposing energies. Saturn, being the malefactor, the restrictor, this will lead to a lot more caution, a lot more discipline, a lot more patience. So this can become challenging for that person because Aries being the house of action, when that action is always brought to caution and is always restrained, it can be difficult to get over a lot of the humps. It can be difficult to overcome the diverse factors that come at us from all different angles. This specific influence can be excellent for business owners. It can be excellent for people that are huge into entrepreneurship and leading themselves and being their own bosses and wanting to build their own life the way that they see it, because they have the discipline and the work ethic to do so. Because the specific energy can be disciplined and honed in a healthy manner, rather than being refined and tied to a chair in a corner. Uranus in Aries will kind of create a bit of a risk taker. Uranus is one of our mental planets. It rules a lot of the mental faculties. So when you see this in Aries, you see a lot of changing within the self. You see a quick mind, but again, this can be a little bit impulsive. When you see Uranus and Aries influencing the world, you see huge technological advancements, new groups of people rising up to try to generate a change in the world. You see a lot of shifting in the structures around us. And when you take that and you apply that to the self, when you have somebody that has Uranus and Aries and is born under that alignment, you can apply that to them personally. Neptune being a more spiritual planet, ruling a lot of our philosophical ideas, our beliefs. Having Neptune in Aries really helps somebody to be able to act on and move forward in their spiritual beliefs. That is somebody that can really use that as a foundation for their daily life and build upon it. Decision making will shift more into the focus of your decision making will shift more into a focus of how will this affect the people around me, how will this affect my life in the long run, and how will this affect my spiritual state. People will be inspired to follow your lead, not by what you say, but by the examples that you create and how you live your life. There will be a lot of creativity and a lot of compassion and a lot of interest in exploring the world at large and looking at how it can be made into a better place. Also, please note that people that have this specific alignment have a little bit more of an inclination to the psychic gifts as well. Again, Neptune being a more spiritual planet that rules a lot of the etheric states, and Aries being your own personal action, there will be more of an aptitude to be able to work within those spiritual levels of existence. Pluto in Aries really creates a individual who is much of a pioneer. They have a lot of originality, they have a lot of freshness and newness. And there is a lot of, again, desire to initiate change, both in themselves and the world around them at large. Pluto doesn't go into Aries very often. Being the farthest planet from the sun, obviously it's going to take longer to rotate the zodiac wheel. Therefore, you don't see this too terribly often. I believe the last time was in the early 1800s. But when this did happen, this was a huge period of westward expansion in the United States, and people spent a lot of time exploring the new frontier. So hopefully that will give you a pretty good idea of Aries and how it operates and how the other planets operate within Aries. I want to thank you for joining with me again today at the Academy of the Magical Art. And until next time,